Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a painting of an ocean sunset. These are the colors that I'm going to be using. I will go ahead and link them below as well. And I'll also put in the brushes that I'm using. I'm just mixing up a mixture of an orange. I'm using cadmium yellow and quinacridone red and white. And I'm going to be mixing up an assortment of oranges and peach colors. So basically I just want to have a really pretty warm sunset, and I want it to be glowing. So I'm going to start off just applying more of a pink color. This is going to be down lower by the water line, and then as I get up higher, I'm just marking in where I'm going to start gradually getting lighter and more on the orange side. So right now I'm putting in more of a peach color. This one has more pink tones to it, and I'm going to be blending it up. And as I keep going up, I'm going to be putting more oranges and yellow tones, because that's where the sun is going to be. I'm using an angled flat brush to apply this. I'm not using my normal 3-inch big brush that I normally like to use when I'm applying the background sky, because I'm going to have more of like a light blue tone up at the top. And so I just wanted to use a smaller brush because I'm going to have more transitions of color throughout this base layer of the sky. So, and I wanted a really nice blend, so I want to work in chunks almost as I'm applying this. So I'm using a 16 by 20 inch canvas also. That's mostly the size that I like to use when I'm doing paintings. I think it's a pretty good size. It's not too big and it's not too tiny. So that's kind of like my go-to size. You can see I've just got a ton of different oranges and pinks that are laid out on my palette. And like I said, I wanted a lot of variation in those colors. And I wanted to transition, throughout the sky. Right now I'm grabbing a mixture of the cad yellow and white. And as I'm getting up further where that sun is going to be, I'm adding more and more white. And I'm just blending it through. My colors on my canvas are all still wet, so it's easily blendable. I'm going to start putting the grayish blue sky in at the top, and it's going to be so light that you barely will even be able to notice it. And I am grabbing a little bit of orange to counteract that blue, so it's kind of more of a grayish. It's a really pretty light blue color. And I've got a little bit of that orange still left on my brush. I didn't clean my brush out, so as I'm blending it, you can see it's blending really nicely. And I'm just going to keep working that in. Now this is going to look a little crazy. I'm going to be grabbing pretty much a bunch of different colors on my brush. And I want a really dirty purple color. And this is just going to be the base coat. We are going to go over this, but I wanted somewhat of a really muted color. I didn't want anything too colorful for this layer. So I'm even going back through, and I'll be grabbing some orange too, and yellow and blue. And it's gonna, you'll see it's gonna make a very, it's kind of like a light mauve color. And I'm using a lot of water. As you can see, it's dripping down my canvas. But that's going to really help get this paint on there and spread quickly. I've switched to my 3-inch flat brush. And I'm just going to keep putting that in there. You can see I'm not overly mixing my colors either. I've got so many different variations of color on my brush. Yours doesn't have to be identical, but that's a good thing, because when you look at water, and especially in a sunset, all of those different colors are reflecting onto the water. So I'm grabbing a little bit of black with a little bit of the primary blue, making a dark bluish gray, and this is going to be where we're putting in our waves. And you want them obviously smaller as they get back farther, but as you're coming up closer, make sure they're getting bigger. And you're I'm using an angled brush, and this is perfect for this type of thing. You kind of want to just make it thin as you start the beginning of the wave, and then push your brush into it flat so it kind of gets wider, and then lift your brush back up so it lays off a little bit more, so you get that thin line there at the end as well. And as I'm getting closer, I'm also making my wave darker. Just got a little bit of blue tones, and I'm going to go ahead and start putting those on the edges there. Popping those in where I feel like putting them in at. Now I'm making a mixture that's slightly less dark than the wave that we put in because I want it to gradually get lighter as it blends into the water area as the wave goes down. So focus on making the top darker, and then I'm even doing some side swipes, as you can see, within the movement of the wave, which is also going to give it some definition. This angled brush is really nice for these type of things. And just keep doing that with your waves. You don't have to get real detailed as you move farther back. Just on these two waves up front is fine. Just blend that in. Now I'm going to make an even lighter blue color, and it's more on the grayer side. It's not too blue. And I'm going to be applying that as kind of a highlight in between those waves. Adding even more white in there. So you see it's just a really pretty light color. And I'm going to apply it towards the back as well. It's just going to make it look really sparkly back there and pretty. And then you see you want to go in between those waves because that's going to act as a highlight on top of the waves. So just follow it in the shape above the wave and kind of almost outline it with that light blue color. It's going to make those waves stand out, that light against the dark. Now I'm using some of that peach color. Now that the foreground has somewhat dried, and I'm going through and applying little bits of the peach color here and there. You don't want it all over the place, just in some random areas. Even going through the real foreground area where the waves are. Just putting those in. So now I've mixed up a color that is similar to the purple that we used in the water. And I've switched to a filbert brush because that's what is going to be really nice to scumble these clouds on now that the background is dry. I'm using circular motions and not too wet of a brush. You want it wet, but you want to dry your brush off and then just start doing little circles with this pink color. And try to focus on making little wispy things here and there down lower where it's going to give the illusion of the sky back there being farther. And for the combination for that color, I used the red, the primary blue, and a little bit of that orange, the orange yellow that I had left, which will help tone down that purple color that the red and blue makes. Now this is going to be quite a big cloud up here, so I'm going to make this block-in area pretty big. So now I'm going to be picking up a little bit of white and adding it to that mixture of the purple, and I'm going to be applying it down below by the water line. And I'm still using the filbert brush, and I'm making sure that I'm just doing little squiggles across, but I'm using a dry brush and I didn't overly mix my colors. So I'm getting a little bit of some variation on that when I'm applying it. I'm just trying to lighten this area up, the clouds there, because it's closer to the sun, I guess, and it's farther away, those clouds are. So I'm going to lighten them up just a tad. So now I'm going through and I'm going to be, now that I've got the clouds formed where I want them in the sky, I'm going to be starting to put in more of a reflection. So I'm using some of that purple that I had, and I lightened it up just a tad, and I'm going to be applying it where they're placed at in the sky somewhat. Well, opposite of where they're placed at on the sky. So it looks like it's reflective. Now I've mixed up a light blue color with the primary blue and white. The majority of it is white, and I've got a little bit of the orange in there as well to mute that blue. It's a very, very, very light color. It's almost white, and I'm putting those on for some bright highlights. Now I've got a mixture of the cadmium yellow and the red and a lot of white. And I'm coming down trying to incorporate that peach color in the sky and bring that out a little bit more through the reflection from the sun area. I'm using a very small flat brush now. Now I'm just taking some of that leftover paint on my brush with the peach color and incorporating a little bit of that into the sky as well. Now in order for the sun to really glow and look bright, I'm wanting to go ahead and incorporate some red tones in that purple cloud so it looks like the sun is right behind it and it's glowing. And anytime you want something that's, you want a really bright sun, what's going to make that sun look so bright is having a glowing effect around it. So just gradually work in those colors. I'm using my finger to blend this out. And it's really going to look nice when we put the brightest highlight in the sun area. And all I did for the mixture for this was the red and cadmium yellow, but I used the majority of red. I'm taking a little bit of that leftover paint that I have on my brush and scumbling it so soft on the edges of those clouds where it's coming closer to the brightest part of the sky. It's good to have just a little bit of that color on those parts of the cloud so it all looks cohesive. And so it's got those brighter, warmer tones, and then the cooler tones that are darker and gradually get darker as you go away from the sun. Now I've got a smaller round brush and I've got straight white from the tube on the tip of my brush. And I'm going through and scumbling it along the area where I want my brightest part of the sun to be. And I'm just blending it out with my finger, and I go right along the edge from where the sun meets that cloud to give kind of a glow. So now I'm going through, now that the waves have completely dried, and I'm trying to define the waves a little more and pop in a little bit more of a shadow, of a darker color in the top of those waves. And again, just side sweeping motions, and I'm using my angled brush, my angled flat brush. This is a very dark grayish blue color. So now I'm putting in some more lighter tones right down the middle where the sparkling water is going to go. We're going to be using the palette knife for that. One of my favorite things to paint is sparkling water, and the way that you get it to sparkle, kind of similar to when you want a glowing sun, is to make sure that you have a very light blended shade underneath where you're going to be putting your dots, or in this case we're going to just be smearing it on kind of with the palette knife, but that's what's going to make that glow. Go ahead and start incorporating that peach color up by the waves as well. So now I've got a palette knife and I've put straight white from the tube on my palette knife. and I'm just very lightly grazing the canvas with it, but I don't have a whole bunch of paint on my palette knife, just enough to coat it, because you don't want to apply it and have it be very chunky. You want it to apply so it's kind of marbled when you apply it to the canvas. And I'm using back and forth sliding motions, light pressure, and it's going to give a really pretty glow to your painting. And don't be afraid to bring it all the way up to the front as well. You want it to be all the way up through the middle portion of the waves. And be careful not to get it on the actual dark part of the wave. You want it just above it, so it's looking as if it's a highlight. And basically like the tops of those waves are sparkling. So now I'm just cleaning up the waterline area, and this painting is just about finished. I hope that you guys really liked this one. Thank you so much for watching, and remember to hit the subscribe button if you liked what you saw, and remember to also hit the notification bell to be alerted for future videos.